What's up, guys? We're going to see this news. Ukraine, Zelensky meets Trump at the White House. Let's go.
Donald Trump has confirmed the US would be involved in security guarantees for Ukraine as part of a deal to end the war with Russia. The comments came during a historic meeting involving several European leaders, Ukraine's President Zellensky, and Mr. Trump at the White House.
There's several on there. There's Macron. I don't know the other ones. I think, my God, Zelensky also.
It was a hastily arranged gathering following hard on the heels of this weekend's Alaska summit involving the US President and Vladimir Putin. Ukraine and much of Europe had feared America would acquiesce to Russia's conditions for ending the war. Now they have the ear of Mr. Trump, with the hope that perhaps even a trilateral meeting involving the US President, Zelensky, and Vladimir Putin might take place soon.
You know, I think personally that Zelensky is already cooked, man. I mean, he doesn't have too much chances already. You know, right now the big issue here, the big discussion is Trump with Putin. You know, and Trump right now it's like a middleman. He's doing as a middleman between Putin and Zelensky. But I think that Trump and Putin already split the cake, man, and Zellensky is already cooked. You know, that's what I think, but let's see.
Well, we'll be live in Kiev and analyze what America's involvement could be in any peacekeeping force, as well as what security guarantees might be on offer for Ukraine. But first, let's go live to Sarah Smith at the White House. Sarah.
Yeah, there's been several hours of meetings inside the White House, still going on at the moment, as we understand. And the mood here could not be more different from that infamous Oval Office showdown 6 months ago.
Oh, that was pretty bad, man. I mean, well, I already saw a part of a video where Zelensky is already not that aggressive as he used to be 6 months ago. He was pretty aggressive, man. Some people say that pretty ungrateful. What do you think?
Talks seem to have been amicable and productive. We've heard from President Zellensky already, who said that this is the best conversation he has ever had with Donald Trump. We know that they looked at a map of Ukraine's front lines together and discussed what a peace settlement could look like before then joining a wider meeting with all the European leaders who've come here as well, all of whom agreed the next step has to be a three-way meeting between the US, Ukraine and Russia.
I mean, don't get me wrong, man. The big guys
A
there,
full ceremonial
is
greeting
USA,
as President
Russia.
Zelensky returned to the White House, prepared for a crucial meeting, hoping it won't be a repeat of his last visit here.
President Trump, sir, your message to the people of Ukraine as world leaders gather here today.
It's an honor to have the president of Ukraine with us. We've had a lot of good discussions, a lot of good talks.
The Ukrainian president handed over a letter from his wife to Melania Trump, who herself has written to President Putin about the plight of Ukrainian children who've been kidnapped to Russia. Attacked for ingratitude 6 months ago, he took great care to say thank you again and again.
Thanks so much, Mr. President. If I can, first of all, thank you for invitation and thank you very much for your efforts. Personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war. Thank you. And using...
You know, I think that he already knows it. He's already lost, man. I mean, that's the reason why he's so grateful, you know.
this opportunity, many thanks to your wife, First Lady of the United States.
President Zelensky wants to see a ceasefire in Ukraine. Donald Trump changed his mind about that after he met President Putin.
Because I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that.
Man, I mean, Trump's like, oh, so you already want the ceasefire? Well, I'm not going to give you that ceasefire. Man, it's just flexing, you know? It's just flexing his power, man. And at the beginning, 6 months ago, Zelensky was like pretty aggressive, and he was like, we don't going to give up, etc. And Trump was like, you should talk with Putin. But now, why do you think that Zelensky it's like so grateful, and why is that? Because he already know that he's at the he just like this little distance to lose the war. He's so close to lose the war. That's the reason why he's like in that passive manners. And Trump right now is saying like, no, you know what? Maybe you should keep fighting. It's pretty heavy, to decide to continue a war, because people are dying every day. So.
Will Mr. Zelensky talk about redrawing Ukraine's borders and ceding land to Russia?
We need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And we will do our best for this. I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war.
Donald Trump really wants to convene a three-party meeting sometime soon. One that would include himself, as well as President Zelensky and Putin.
And I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues. And if we do, we have a good chance. I think if we have a trilat, there's a good chance of maybe ending it. But he's expecting my call when we're finished with this meeting.
The Ukrainian leader came dressed in a suit, not his usual fatigues, after he was attacked for his attire the last time.
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said,
You look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah.
Those reporters, man, those reporters. My God. They are shooting to kill, Like, you're using a suit. Why was that?
That's the one that attacked you last time. See, now I remember.
Yeah, I apologize.
It's the same
You look
one.
No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. I changed, you are not.
After their Oval
You know what? He doesn't need to change, man. I mean, you're the one that was without the proper clothing. Some people think the suit is necessary. Some people don't. Some people see it like nonsense, But one thing is for sure, that tells you something. Beyond the suit, beyond that tells you an attitude.
Presidents Trump and Zelensky sat down with Sir Keir Starmer and the 6 other European leaders who are here to support Ukraine to discuss how they can guarantee it won't be attacked again. Mr. Zelensky seemed upbeat.
I think that we had very good conversation with President Trump.
Very good.
And it really was the best one. Maybe the best one will be in the future. But it was really good. And we spoke about very sensitive points. The first one is security guarantees. And we are very happy with President that all the leaders are here, and security in Ukraine depends on the United States and on you and on those leaders who are with us in our hearts.
European countries will be key to any NATO-style agreement that they would all rally to defend Ukraine in future.
You can see that Zelensky is so passive, man. So passive. And as I always say here, there's no villains. There's no heroes. I mean, we all know that Trump has done a lot of bad things, Pretty shady things, And right now with Epstein, it's worst. Because, he gives some pardon, right, to the wife of that guy, Epstein. Why is that? Of course, because he was on the list. But also that list is like, it's pretty tricky, because there is a chance, I'm not saying about Trump, But there is a chance that some people there are not as involved in pedo stuff, you know, and that can ruin that people's life. So it's tricky one, you know. Maybe all of those of that list are guilty, you know, maybe, but we don't know for sure, you know. So what I was saying right now is that there's no villains, there's no heroes. Trump has done a lot of bad things, you know. But you have to be neutral, and you have to also like accept that Trump is doing some things that are okay, you know. As also Putin, Russia, Ukraine. There's not a villain. There's not a villain. There's not a hero. There's just countries that are involved in certain situations that are pretty messed up.
The war in Ukraine has had a huge impact, particularly on the Ukrainians who've borne the brunt of it. But it's also had an impact on Europe and on the United Kingdom. There's not a family or community that hasn't been affected. And when we talk about security, we're talking about security not just of Ukraine, we're talking about the security of Europe and the United Kingdom as well, which is why this is such an important issue.
Never before have so many leaders gathered together in the White House. This historic event may make progress towards ending the war in Ukraine, but one person is missing. They all agreed the next step has to be a meeting that includes Vladimir Putin. A summit with Ukraine and Russia could be the result of what's been discussed here today.
But they're going to do that. But at the end, you know, once you have a solid ground, you can do that meeting, you know, the trifecta, Trump, Zellensky, and Putin. But it's all appearances, you know. There's a lot of things that they don't show you here on YouTube, on the TV, etc. And something tell me that the cake is already split.
We'll be live with Katie Watson in Kiev in a moment. But to you, Sarah, the talks, they seem to have broken up. They went on for a while. Any developments?
Well, as you say, as we understand, the various leaders have now left the Oval Office, and we hope that we'll be hearing from a number of them quite soon. They will disappear off to their own corners and we hope give press conferences where we might find out a little bit more about what went on in the room. There was very positive vibes about it coming when I was in the room for the beginning of that meeting with the European leaders, Presidents Trump and Zellensky, with everybody taking great care, of course, to thank and praise Donald Trump for having convened this meeting and possibly moving towards a trilateral meeting with Russia, US and Ukraine.
And also, you know, you can say a lot of bad things about Trump that are probably true. But also one thing is for sure, you know, maybe there's a lot of interest behind the peace deals that he's doing. But one thing is for sure, if he accomplished this, don't be surprised that maybe he's going to receive the Nobel Prize, you know, because he already did some great changes in the Congo, the Republic of Congo, with, I don't know what was the other country, Uganda or something like that. I don't know quite well, but he's doing some progress there. Maybe, as I say previously, maybe there's a lot of interest there. But, you know, if this war is over, he's going to save also a lot of lives, you know? And as a neutral person, you have to accept that. I mean, a Democrat has to accept the good things that Trump is doing. And Republicans, they have to accept the shady things that Trump is doing, or maybe he has done before. Because once for sure, he has done a lot of shady things. You know, he used to have a horse, a race horse named Alibi. I mean, come on.
We have heard here that President Zellensky, who had planned to do an interview with Fox News following these meetings, has now cancelled that, but no indication if that's because things have gone particularly well or particularly badly. You'll remember the last time President Zellensky was here 6 months ago, a press conference afterwards was planned as he was rushed out of the White House after that falling out in the Oval Office. The entire afternoon's events fell to pieces then, and he was quickly taken off the premises. It's been quite the opposite today, as hours of meetings have been going on, which have only just broken up in the last few minutes.
Yeah.
Well, that's because the last time he was so unstable, you know, so aggressive. That's the reason why I can bet you that Trump said to him, you know, you have to leave without any interviews because we don't trust you. You know, Trump was not going to be there to defend himself. That's the reason why maybe he didn't give any interviews. Right now, it's like it's so big, the difference of Zellensky, the behavior of Zellensky, you know, follow the rules, doing exactly what he has to do. But why do you think it's happening then? Why is happening? Why that is happening? Because he already knows that the cake was split, and he is on the danger zone to lose his part of the cake. He already knows that maybe he's cooked. That's the reason why he's doing that. That's the reason that's how losers behave. He's not behaving like a champion, you know. Putin is behaving like a champion, like not going there and, you know, to give himself more importance. And Zelensky is not doing that.
A very different atmosphere indeed. To you, Katie, in Kiev, it has to be said, we got another grim reminder overnight of the toll of this war on Ukraine.
Absolutely. The last day has been very difficult here in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, which was the worst hit, the most deadly attack, a drone attack on a residential building, killing at least 7, including a 1.5-year-old little girl.
That's what I meant. That's what I mean. If this war is over, a lot of lives are going to be saved. And if Trump achieved that, his team, that it's something that you will not be able to remove that good deed. Also, the Epstein list is something bad that you won't be able to remove for Trump. You know, you have to be like objective. You have to be neutral in this.
And further south in Zaporizhia, there was an attack on a bus stop, several dead there, as well as an attack on an oil facility in Odessa. So, yes, it's been a difficult day, but this is also the daily reality for Ukraine. And President Zellensky was in Washington against this backdrop of an active war and trying to, you know, explain to Donald Trump and leaders this is exactly why Ukraine wants to find a path towards leading peace.
Yeah, and the view of people where you are, of those talks in Washington, is there a sense of hope that there could be a breakthrough?
Of course.
I spoke to a Ukrainian yesterday who was very worried about this meeting, worried that President Zellensky would be made a fool of after that meeting back in February.
You you cannot blame Zelensky to make a fool of himself, you know? He used to be a comic actor, right? I mean, he used to be a clown, so you cannot blame him to make fool of himself, you know? Also, Zellensky has the good things and bad things, you know? One good thing is the courage that he had to stay on the country. Most of the people, well, they ran off of that, but he didn't do that. That's a good thing about Zellensky. The other thing is he's a soul out, you know? There's another people controlling him. You cannot avoid that. And also the fascist and Nazi squads that he has on his army. But, well, never mind.
I mean, if you think 3 days ago, Ukrainians here were watching Presidents Trump and Putin holding a summit in Alaska on Ukraine, not even inviting Ukraine. Fast forward to today, and he's now at the center of negotiations with European leaders and Donald Trump. So I think people here will be pleased to see that turnaround, pleased to hear from leaders, you know, talking about security guarantees, talking about a trilateral. He and his advisors even brought along a map to show Donald Trump about where what territory in Ukraine was held by Russia, presumably with the intention of explaining that they did not want to be giving up any of that land. But certainly,
Ukraine is going to give some land. If you want peace here, Ukraine has to give up some land. Russia is never going to give up some land. You know, Russia, it's a bigger country than Ukraine. That's the way it is. I'm not saying there is something good or something bad about it. No, it's just the way it is. Ukraine is going to give something.
Ceasefire talk as well. Donald Trump wanting to skip a ceasefire. Again, leaders saying that was really important to have a ceasefire first. I think all of this will be good news for Ukrainians watching and tuning into this, even if, it's small steps and we're still a long way from peace.
Yeah, small steps. All right, Katie, thank you for that. Katie Watson in Kiev and Sarah Smith in Washington. Many thanks. Well, as we've been hearing, Donald Trump did confirm America would be involved in providing security guarantees for Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. So
that's pretty important, man. I mean, you have to have some guarantees for Ukraine and, for the world, because if this rises, probably there's going to be a World War III, so we have to be careful. But yes, they need guarantees. Otherwise, all of this is going to be in vain, because you can tell that Russia, he has that trend to not stop invading, So if you don't have a pretty solid and a long-term guarantees, Russia is going to do the same. So it's going to be a non-stop war. So you have to have those guarantees. And I'm agreeing with the Secretary Marco Rubio. The only country that can give those guarantees, the only president that can give those guarantees is Donald Trump, and it's the USA. I mean, you cannot ignore that. That's the way it is.
how would those guarantees work, and what could any deal mean for Ukraine's territorial integrity? Here's Paul Adams.
These could be decisive days in the search for peace in Ukraine. But it's clear that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump expect Kyiv to give up places that have already been through hell, where the sacrifices have been enormous.
We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines that are pretty obvious, very sad, actually, to look at them.
Vladimir Putin has been trying to conquer the eastern region known as the Donbass for more than a decade.
Also, Putin also have good things and bad things, Bad things, well, enough has been said about that, right? He used to kill every enemy that he has, It's a dictator. Yes. But also, you cannot blame Russia to invade Ukraine, because as far as I know, they start to putting a lot of NATO and US points of how can I put it? Military bases. They're putting a lot of them surrounding Russia, so they have to have some military bases to compensate those military bases of NATO and United States, so you cannot blame Russia to try to defend himself. As I said, there's no villains, there's no heroes, there's just things happening.
It consists of two administrative areas, Donetsk and Luhansk. But Ukraine still holds around 30% of Donetsk. There's a line of cities here from Sloviansk through Kramatorsk and down to Konstantinivka. It's become known as Ukraine's fortress belt. Giving it up and allowing Russia to gobble up what remains of Donetsk would leave other parts of Ukraine vulnerable to a future Russian attack.
Losing the core of this defensive belt means the Ukrainians are losing their most heavily defended, fortified positions.
Losing the war.
And much more of the country would be vulnerable to future attack.
Mm-hmm.
And that raises the question not just of territory, but Ukraine's future security too. President Trump says there's been a breakthrough.
President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider, and we're going to be considering that at the table also, like who will do what.
Ukrainian troops have been training in the UK and elsewhere since early in the war. Kyiv's allies determined to bolster its defences in the event of a ceasefire. Donald Trump seems willing to lend a hand, but the details are vague.
For a security guarantee to work, it would need to define the territory to be defended and the behavior to be monitored or expected. And without those, it's difficult to see that the Russians would believe the US would deploy forces to directly fight them in defense of Ukraine or the Europeans.
But I mean, who's going to pay for that? United States. You know, but some people, they're saying like, you know, there's some interest there, there's some money involved, etc. Of course there's money involved, man. I mean, why United States has to have the accountability of this issue? There's no accountability that United States have with this situation, but it's happening. And there's a lot of money there. It's going to they're going to take from the taxpayer to give those guarantees. And you cannot blame United States for having some interest in this war, because they are offering a service that no one in the world is going to give you. You know, so there's people trying to put this like a ambition from the US and etc. They are the saviors, man. I mean, what? How many times? How long do you think that Ukraine is going to last without United States, the help of United States? Days, man. So you cannot blame United States for having some interest in this war. You cannot blame Russia to invade certain country to avoid they have a military base around their country. You cannot blame Ukraine for defend his country, man. I feel pretty sad for the people of Ukraine, you know. But that's the way the things are. And you cannot play heroes and villains in this, because you have to take seriously this situation. And I'm not taking like the easy path to be neutral and not like have a compromise and not to have an attachment for something. I mean, I'm taking the middle side, the neutral side, so I can unfold the blindness of my eyes. You know, if you blame villains and heroes, you're going to be blind, and you're not going to see things are the way they are. There's no angels, there's no devils, there's just situations happening. They are so complex. That's it. And I know
War has dominated life in Kramatorsk for more than 10 years.
It's hard to tell that to the victims, you know, of the war. But I mean, and if something happened to my family, I also thought that I will think that there's some devils there, you know, doing this war. But as hard as it sounds, there's no angels, there's no devils. There's just things happening.
While discussions about its future are held in distant capitals, people here are clinging on. Paul Adams, BBC News.
You know, so there it is, man. It's a shame. But I'm not going to take a side, man. That's my job here, you know, to be neutral. So I leave you this news and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.